Before you ever try to rescue someone who feels broken, answer this honestly. How many times have you almost drowned emotionally trying to keep someone else afloat? How many nights have you stayed awake solving problems that were never even yours? How much time, money, attention, and energy have you poured into people who promised change, but kept repeating the same behavior? Let that sink in for a second. There's a hard truth about human nature that powerful leaders understood centuries ago, but most people ignore today because it sounds too harsh. Not everyone wants to be saved, and even more important, not everyone can be saved. Some people don't grab your hand to climb out of the water. They grab your hand to use you as support while they continue sinking, and slowly pull you down with them. If that reality resonates with you, stay with me. And if you've ever been the strong one, the dependable one, the person everyone turns to when things fall apart, make sure you subscribe right now. Because this channel is about clarity, not comfort. And what you're about to hear might completely change how you see the people around you. You've been conditioned to believe that being a good person means fixing everyone, that loyalty means tolerating anything, that love means unlimited access, that saying no makes you selfish, especially in American culture, where support, sacrifice, and emotional availability are praised. People often wear exhaustion like it's proof of value. They think the more they endure for others, the more honorable they become. But there's a difference between kindness and self-destruction. There's a strategic way of looking at relationships that thinkers like Machiavelli discussed in different language. Most people misunderstand his ideas. They think it's about manipulation or cold power games. But at its core, it's about awareness. It's about seeing patterns clearly instead of emotionally. And one powerful lesson from that mindset is this: if you operate with pure good intentions in a world where not everyone operates with good faith, you will eventually burn out. Compassion without boundaries is not strength, it is exposure. When you give unlimited access to people who lack accountability, they will unconsciously test how far your generosity goes. And if you never draw a line, they will keep crossing it. Imagine your life like a ship crossing the ocean. You only have limited fuel, limited space, limited resources. If you start allowing everyone on board, the unstable, the reckless, the people who refuse responsibility, your ship may feel full of purpose at first. You might even feel proud. But over time, it becomes overloaded, and when it sinks, everyone goes down, including you. Strategic people understand this. They protect their vessel, not because they hate people, but because they respect survival. This is where something called the savior trap comes in. It feels noble, it feels moral, it feels heroic. You believe you can love someone into discipline. You believe if you support them long enough, they will wake up and change. You believe your patience will eventually trigger transformation. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You cannot rescue someone who is comfortable in their dysfunction. If their chaos brings them attention, if their struggle brings them sympathy, if their instability always gets solved by someone else, then change becomes unnecessary for them. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is stepping back and letting consequences speak. Because consequences teach lessons that advice never will. When you constantly protect someone from failure, you interrupt cause and effect. You remove the pressure that forces growth, and while you're busy being the hero, your own life slowly starts to suffer. Let's talk about one dangerous pattern you need to recognize early. The architect of chaos. This is the person whose life is always exploding. Every conversation starts with a crisis. Another job lost, another relationship destroyed, another financial emergency, another conflict with someone, another problem that requires immediate rescue. At first, you feel empathy. You think maybe they're just unlucky. Maybe life keeps attacking them. So you step in, you lend money, you make phone calls, you give advice, you solve problems. For a short period, things calm down, then the cycle repeats. Here's what most people fail to notice. Chronic chaos is rarely random. It's usually created by repeated poor decisions, impulsive reactions, and refusal to take responsibility. But the architect of chaos never sees themselves as the source. It's always someone else's fault. A toxic partner, a bad boss, a corrupt system. Bad timing, bad luck, never their choices. And when you attach your stability to someone like this, their instability slowly becomes your problem. Chaos spreads when accountability is absent. If someone is addicted to crisis, they subconsciously create situations that keep the drama alive. Because crisis gives them identity, it gives them attention, It gives them a role. If they stop having problems, they lose the spotlight. So ask yourself honestly, are you rescuing someone or reinforcing their pattern? If this part already hit you hard, understand something important. Recognizing a pattern doesn't mean you hate the person, it means you value your future. Distance is not cruelty. Distance is self-preservation. And in the next part, we're going deeper into a type that looks even more dangerous, because this one doesn't create chaos loudly. This one acts grateful. This one says thank you. This one makes you feel needed. But slowly, your generosity turns into obligation. Now let's go deeper into the second type. And this one is more dangerous than the chaotic person, because it doesn't attack your peace openly. It doesn't create visible destruction at first. It doesn't show red flags immediately. It feels grateful. It feels loyal. It makes you feel important. This is what we call the bottomless pit. The first time they need help, they approach you with humility. They say things like, "I don't know what I would do without you. You're the only one who understands me. Thank you for saving me." And that gratitude feels powerful. It activates something inside you. You feel valued, needed, strong. You feel like your effort actually matters. So you step in, you solve the problem, you give advice, you lend support, you offer resources. They thank you again, maybe even publicly, maybe in front of others. That appreciation reinforces your identity as the dependable one. You walk away thinking, this is a healthy dynamic. But pay attention to the pattern. The second time they need help, the gratitude is shorter, less emotional, more expected than appreciated. The third time, they don't really ask, they assume. Instead of saying, "Can you help me?" they say things like, You'll help me with this, right?" Or they drop hints that pressure you into responding. And if you hesitate even slightly, their tone shifts. "I thought you had my back. I guess I know who my real friends are." Suddenly your boundaries become a problem. That's when you realize something important. Your generosity has quietly transformed into obligation. The bottomless pit doesn't see your support as a gift. They see it as something you owe them. Here's the psychological shift happening underneath. When someone depends on you repeatedly, especially for emotional or financial rescue, they start building an internal expectation that you will always absorb their consequences. Over time, dependence breeds entitlement, and entitlement breeds resentment. Because deep down, they feel small compared to you. Your discipline exposes their lack of it. Your stability highlights their instability. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Instead of using that discomfort to improve themselves, they often protect their ego by minimizing you. Have you ever noticed that sometimes the person you help the most later becomes the one who criticizes you the most? That's not random. That's unresolved resentment trying to balance the power dynamic. They may smile at you, they may still ask for help, but somewhere inside, they feel inferior, and that feeling slowly turns into subtle resistance. The bottomless pit is empty not because of lack of opportunity, but because of lack of accountability. No matter how much you give, money, attention, guidance, connections, it never feels enough to them. Because what they truly need is internal responsibility, and that is something no one can donate. Here's a powerful test you can use. Say no once. Not aggressively, not disrespectfully, just calmly decline a request. Watch the reaction carefully. A healthy person may feel disappointed, but they respect boundaries. They adjust. They move forward. The bottomless pit reacts differently. They guilt trip. They go cold. They become passive-aggressive. They might even punish you emotionally by withdrawing affection or creating distance, just because you refused one request. That reaction reveals dependency disguised as friendship or love. And here's something important for strong people to understand. If you constantly feel drained after interacting with someone, that's information. Your body picks up imbalance before your mind fully processes it. Generosity should feel meaningful. It should not feel like a repeated extraction. Many people get trapped in this dynamic because they enjoy being needed. Let's be honest about that. Being someone's solution feels powerful. It creates identity. It makes you feel superior in a subtle way. But here's the uncomfortable question you must ask yourself. If you stop helping them, who are you? If your value is tied to rescuing people, then you unconsciously need them to stay weak so you can stay significant. That realization is uncomfortable, but powerful. True strength is not needing others to depend on you for validation. It's choosing relationships where support flows both ways. The bottomless pit will slowly drain your time and attention if you allow unlimited access, and when you finally pull back, they might accuse you of changing, but in reality, you stopped enabling. Remember this clearly. You're not responsible for carrying adults who refuse to carry themselves. You can support growth. You cannot replace effort. In the next part, we move into something darker, because the next type doesn't drain you through need. They drain you through comparison. They smile at your success, they act supportive, but secretly, they compete. This is the Smiling Sabotager, and once you recognize it, you will never look at certain relationships the same way again. Now we step into dangerous territory, because this type doesn't create chaos openly. They don't beg constantly like the bottomless pit. They don't cry for rescue, they don't argue aggressively, they smile, they congratulate you, they act supportive. But underneath, they compare. This is the Smiling Sabotager, and this one is powerful because it hides inside relationships that feel close, friends, co-workers, even family. At first, everything feels equal. You start at the same level. You struggle together. You grow together. There's mutual respect. Then something shifts. You start improving. Maybe you become more disciplined. Maybe your finances improve. Maybe your body changes. Maybe your business grows. Maybe your mindset evolves and they don't move at the same speed. That's when quiet envy begins. The first sign is subtle language. When you share good news, their response sounds supportive, but there's always a small but. That's great, but make sure it's stable. Wow, congratulations, just don't get too excited. Nice promotion. Those jobs are stressful though. On the surface, it looks like concern. Underneath, it plants doubt. They're not attacking you directly. They're inserting uncertainty into your momentum, because envy doesn't want to destroy you loudly. It wants to shrink you quietly. Open enemies are easy to handle. You see them coming. You prepare. You respond. But the Smiling Sabotager hides the threat behind encouragement. They may celebrate your wins publicly, while privately feeling threatened by them. Your success forces them to confront their own stagnation, and not everyone has the courage to face that discomfort. Some people respond to your growth with inspiration, others respond with comparison, and comparison, when unmanaged, turns into resentment. You might notice small patterns over time. They bring up your past mistakes during conversations about your future. They remind others of times you failed, even when it's irrelevant. They casually share your private struggles under the excuse of concern or advice. They may even subtly distract you before important moments, starting unnecessary drama right before your focus matters most. These are not random behaviors. They are power shifts disguised as friendship. Here's what's happening psychologically. When someone close to you sees you leveling up, they experience an internal threat to their identity. If they tied their self-worth to being equal or superior to you, your growth destabilizes that position. Instead of leveling up themselves, some people attempt to reduce your visibility, not because they hate you directly, but because your progress reminds them of what they are not doing. And here's the hard truth. You cannot bring someone into success by forcing them to feel inspired. You cannot eliminate envy through generosity. You can give them opportunities. You can support them. You can share knowledge. But if their mindset is rooted in comparison instead of self-improvement, your presence alone will trigger insecurity. Many strong people make a mistake here. They try to lift the envious person up with them. They think, if I help them win too, they won't feel threatened. So they invest energy into building the other person's confidence. But envy is not cured by support. It is activated by comparison. Even if you give them resources, connections, and encouragement, if they still measure themselves against you, tension will remain. There's a powerful strategy experienced people use in these situations. Move in silence, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Share less about your plans. Speak less about your goals before execution. Let your results speak publicly while your strategy stays private. Not everyone deserves access to your blueprint. Silence protects momentum, because when people don't know your next move, they cannot strategically undermine it. And here's something important. If you feel like you have to shrink your ambition around someone to keep them comfortable, that's information. Healthy relationships celebrate growth. Toxic dynamics tolerate growth only when it benefits them. Pay attention to who genuinely celebrates your wins without inserting doubt. Those people are rare and valuable. The Smiling Sabotager may not attack you directly, but over time, their subtle negativity can slowly weaken your confidence if you internalize it. So instead of reacting emotionally, observe calmly, notice patterns, adjust access accordingly. You're not obligated to keep someone close simply because you share history. History does not automatically equal trust, and sometimes distance is the most strategic response to quiet envy. In the next part, we go even deeper, because not everyone drains you through comparison. Some people drain you through sympathy. They cry, they suffer, they present themselves as constantly wounded, and if you are empathetic, this next type is the most dangerous of all. Now we enter territory that confuses good people the most. This type doesn't attack you with chaos. They don't compete with you loudly. They don't smile while secretly sabotaging. They come to you wounded. They come fragile. They come with tears. This is the professional victim. And before we go deeper, let's be clear, real victims exist. Real pain exists. Real trauma exists. People go through abuse, loss, injustice, and hardship every single day. But the professional victim is different. A real victim wants healing. A professional victim wants identity. Their suffering becomes their main character story. Every conversation eventually circles back to what happened to them, what someone did to them, how life treated them unfairly. At first, your response is natural. You listen, you empathize, you support, you try to understand. Because you are a decent human being. They say things like, "You don't understand how hard it's been for me. I can't do that because of my anxiety. My past is why I struggle with this." And those statements may contain truth. But watch what happens when you offer solutions. You suggest therapy. They say they tried it. You suggest discipline. They say they're overwhelmed. You suggest accountability. They say you're being insensitive. You offer a ladder. They say their arms are tired. You offer a rope. They say it burns. You offer to pull them up. They go limp and make themselves heavier. Because improvement threatens their identity. If they heal, they lose the attention tied to their pain. If they become capable, they lose the sympathy that protects them from responsibility. And for someone who built their self-concept around being wounded, growth feels like losing who they are. That's why resistance appears whenever change is required. Here's what often happens to empathetic people. You start by helping occasionally, then helping becomes regular, then helping becomes expected, then helping becomes demanded, and if you attempt to set boundaries, suddenly you become the villain in their story. They might tell others that you abandoned them. They might say you changed. They might frame your boundary as betrayal. Why? Because every victim narrative needs a villain. And when you stop playing the hero role, you automatically get assigned the villain role. That shift can shock people who genuinely tried to help. But understand this clearly, you were never their partner in growth. You became part of their support system for maintaining emotional comfort. And comfort without progress creates dependency. The professional victim often unconsciously protects their suffering because it gives them leverage. If they are always struggling, people lower expectations. If they are always fragile, people excuse behavior. If they are always healing, they avoid being challenged. But long-term protection from discomfort prevents long-term development. Boundaries are especially hard to set with this type because you feel guilty. You think, maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe they really can't handle it. Maybe I should give them more patience. But ask yourself, honestly, are they incapable or are they unwilling? There's a difference. Some people need support temporarily while they build strength. Others resist strength because weakness works better for them socially. If someone rejects every practical solution but constantly repeats their pain story, pay attention. Action reveals intention. Talk is cheap. One powerful moment that exposes this pattern is when you calmly say, "I care about you, but I can't solve this for you." Watch the reaction. A healthy person may feel uncomfortable, but they accept responsibility. A professional victim feels threatened because you remove the safety net of rescue. And sometimes that reaction alone gives you clarity about the relationship. Remember this carefully. Supporting someone's healing is different from carrying someone's excuses. Compassion should encourage growth. It should not enable stagnation. You're allowed to care deeply and still refuse to absorb someone else's emotional burden. In the next part, we move to someone even harder to deal with. This type argues. This type refuses correction. This type believes they already know everything, and no amount of logic changes them. If you've ever tried to reason with someone who fights every suggestion, you know exactly who we're talking about. Stay with me. Now we arrive at the last type, and this one tests your patience more than your emotions. This person doesn't beg for help like the bottomless pit. They don't cry for sympathy like the professional victim. They don't hide envy behind smiles. They don't create chaos constantly. They argue. They resist. They defend their mistakes like it's a personal identity. This is the arrogant fool. And understand something clearly, arrogance is not always loud. It can sound confident. It can sound educated. It can sound logical. But underneath, it refuses correction. You can see their pattern from a distance. They repeatedly choose bad decisions, wrong relationships, risky investments, impulsive actions. And when things collapse, instead of reflecting, they blame timing, bad luck, other people, or circumstances, rarely themselves, because accepting responsibility would require ego surrender. And that's uncomfortable. You may care about this person deeply, so you warn them, you show them evidence, you explain calmly, you break down the consequences step by step. You think logic will open their eyes, but instead it triggers resistance. They twist your words, they argue over details, they turn simple advice into long debates. They challenge your perspective, not to learn, but to win. Here's the truth most people eventually realize. You cannot use logic to pull someone out of a position they didn't use logic to enter. The arrogant fool is not lacking intelligence. They are lacking humility. And humility is what makes growth possible. When someone believes they already know enough, they stop listening. When someone believes feedback is an attack, they stop improving. When someone interprets correction as disrespect, they isolate themselves from wisdom. And here's the frustrating part. If you push too hard trying to correct them, they label you arrogant. If you step back and let them experience consequences, they say you didn't support them. Either way, you become the problem in their narrative. That's why experienced people stop arguing endlessly. They choose silence. Silence is powerful because reality eventually delivers the lesson. Reality does not debate. Reality does not negotiate. Reality simply responds to actions. And when consequences hit, sometimes the arrogant fool finally pauses, but often only after damage has already been done. At that point, your role is not to rescue, it is to observe. You can offer guidance once, maybe twice. After that, repeated warnings turn into wasted energy. Save your advice for people who ask for it. Save your energy for people who show willingness to learn. Wisdom forced on a closed mind creates conflict, not change. And now, step back. Look at everything we covered. The architect of chaos, the bottomless pit, the smiling sabotager, the professional victim, the arrogant fool, 6 patterns, 6 warning signs, and chances are you recognized at least one person in your life who fits one of these categories. Maybe it's someone close. Maybe it's someone you've been trying to fix for years. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you continue trying to save everyone who falls into these patterns, you will slowly lose yourself. People will call you selfish when you set boundaries. They might call you cold when you distance yourself. They may even accuse you of changing. Let them. Because what weak people call selfish, strong people call self-preservation. What emotional reactions label as cold, strategic thinking calls clarity. You must transition from savior to sovereign. A savior jumps into every emotional storm trying to rescue everyone, and often drowns in the process. A sovereign builds a lighthouse. He stands firm. He shines light. He provides direction. But he does not chase swimmers into dangerous waters. Those who truly want safety will move toward the light. Those who choose chaos will drift away, and the lighthouse remains stable. When you stop overinvesting in people who refuse accountability, something powerful happens. Your energy returns, your focus sharpens, your finances stabilize, your relationships become healthier, because you're no longer leaking power into emotional black holes. But there's one final truth we must address. After you cut ties, after you set boundaries, after you distance yourself from chaos and manipulation, you may find yourself alone in silence. And in that silence, something deeper surfaces. You start reflecting on why you tolerated so much, why you ignored red flags, why you kept forgiving repeated patterns. That reflection is uncomfortable, but necessary. Because growth is not just about recognizing toxic people. It's also about strengthening your own standards. Sometimes we become saviors because we fear abandonment. Sometimes we accept poor treatment because we fear being alone. Sometimes we overgive because we confuse love with sacrifice. Understanding that is powerful, because once you see your own patterns clearly, you stop repeating them. Remember this: you're not responsible for fixing every broken person you encounter. You're responsible for protecting the vessel that carries your future. Choose wisely, guard your energy, build boundaries, and invest deeply in people who invest deeply in themselves. If this series opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and tell me which type you've dealt with the most. I read them. And if you made it to the end, that means you value awareness over comfort. Subscribe if you haven't, because clarity is power,